Okay, we'll call the Plan Commission meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Goslin?
Here.
Harms? Here. Joseph?
Here.
Lalonde?
Here.
McGrail?
Here.
Peterson?
Here.
And Schneider.
Great. Anything to be removed, added, or changed? Okay, approval of minutes. Has everybody been able to read the August 16th Plan Commission meeting minutes? And are there any questions, comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, also move that we approve the minutes.
You have a second?
Second.
Bill? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, minutes approved. Okay, moving right into the first item, public hearing for a proposed single-family residential subdivision at 1600 West Wilson Street. It has been continued to the September 20th meeting at the applicant's request. So if anybody is here related to that portion of this meeting, that's not going to happen tonight. The next item on the agenda is the Campana redevelopment at 901. Do we have to formally continue this? Sorry.
Yeah, it might be open and then immediately continue.
Okay, so we need a motion to open the public hearing.
So move. I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
So the public hearing is open. Now we need a motion to continue to September 20th.
Also move.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, continued. The next item is Campana redevelopment, 901 North Batavia Avenue and 301 and 501 West Fabian Parkway. Evergreen Real Estate Group applicant, who we're very familiar with by now. Just a few opening comments. First of all, thank you for coming and for your interest in this very important project. I'm sure most, if not all of you, are aware that this is the fourth meeting. We had 3 long meetings of mostly public testimony, applicant presentation, responses to questions, staff report. A lot of valuable information came from that. And so we're going to continue our deliberations tonight that we started at the August 30th meeting related to the ruling on 3 issue, basically zoning related to the plan development, the property subdivision, and design review. We're not having any more public testimony at this point. We closed the public hearing at the last meeting. We know this is an emotional issue, and many of you are very passionate about your feelings. With few exceptions, the process overall has gone very smoothly, and we very much appreciate that. Unless we specifically request you to speak, we expect you to remain respectful and silent throughout the meeting. So no applauding, no call-outs, etc. Thank you for your cooperation. All right, Joel, you have an update from last meeting?
Yes, very briefly, I wanted to point out the a change to a number of the conditions that staff has recommended, along with its recommendations for approval of the various items. Regarding the plan development, staff has changed one of the recommendations that was addressing the concern about a split in ownership of the properties. And there is a replacement condition that now reads execution, delivery, and recording of a declaration of covenants, conditions, restrictions, and easements to run with the land as to all subdivided parcels, with these covenants and restrictions being subject to the reasonable approval of the city. And we understand that the issue of keeping this project essentially unified in terms of its use is the primary concern. And the applicant will need to deliver to staff a draft of this document, which staff will then review and approve, and if necessary, to perhaps have it reviewed and accepted by the city council in addition to staff reviewing it. One of the other conditions for the plan development address the transportation for grade school children, and staff has shortened that condition to simply state that Evergreen shall provide transportation for the grade school children, and it goes on as written before. We have also added a number of conditions to the plan development that came out of the Plan Commission's conversation at the last meeting. We have added the condition that the recommendation for approval, staff is recommending that this approval be subject to historic preservation approvals and city staff approval, and that Evergreen shall construct subject to these approvals, Evergreen shall construct sidewalks along the outer edges of the parking spaces in the east oval to connect the Batavia Avenue sidewalk with the sidewalks near the east side of the building. Another condition is also subject to historic preservation approvals and city staff approval, that with the construction of land bank parking, Evergreen shall replace the displaced tot lot and/or soccer field with other outdoor amenities. And another added condition is, again, subject to historic preservation approvals and city staff approvals. Evergreen shall add a minimum of 2 benches east of the building and a minimum of 1 bench adjacent to the tot lot soccer field area, along with trash receptacles in each location. Another condition is subject to historic preservation approvals and city staff approvals. Evergreen shall construct a vehicle loading area near the building's main east entrance. And finally, for the plan development, subject to KDOT approval and city staff approval, Evergreen shall install signs prohibiting left turns during the peak morning traffic period onto Fabian Parkway. Staff has also added a condition, a recommended condition of approval for the preliminary and final plat of subdivision, and that is that the declaration of covenants, conditions, restrictions, and easements shall include a covenant that the entire parcel shall be deemed to consist of 1 zoning lot under the city zoning code, and that the owner of any subdivided parcel shall not have the right to request or obtain any amendment to the plan development overlay zoning applicable to the zoning lot without the consent of the owners of all other subdivided parcels.
Thank you. And has the applicant read these and is in agreement with the added conditions?
Yes, we have, and yes, we are.
Great, thanks. Any questions, comments, concerns related to the staff update?
Since our last meeting, has the Historic Preservation Committee met and seen our conditions?
No, they will meet on Monday.
And of course, all of those conditions are subject to the state historic agency, so
Correct.
I would assume if the state agency is in agreement, they would probably be in agreement. Okay, we can continue kind of where we left off. And I don't know if you want to recap, but we talked through the modifications. So any adjustments would have been incorporated in the staff report. Modifications and conditions, I think we got all the way through the conditions before we ended the meeting at about 10:30 last Wednesday. So any further comment, questions, et cetera, related to the zoning change to a plan development? What are the thoughts about the request for the plan development? Are we all in agreement with moving forward with approval, or is there anyone who has issues with it?
No.
I had a couple of questions, but I don't know that they apply to the plan development. It's on the entrances. maybe more design?
Well, we have design review to address probably more broadly any
Okay.
design concerns, and that can continue or expand into the building, the site. I would say looking at, maybe we just take a look at the plan development overlay as a statement of a purpose, just to make sure that we don't miss anything. I'm just going to go ahead and read it.
Okay.
Purpose of the plan development overlay districts are to modify base district regulations to implement the comprehensive plan, provide opportunities for unique or mixed-use development, and provide opportunities for development intensity greater than permitted by base district regulations for affordable housing, senior housing, and congregate living facilities. So in my mind, all of those apply.
I agree.
It meets the land use regulations. It meets the site development regulations. Just had one question on here. Now this is under mixed use, which is technically not, well, it is applicable. I saw a 50-foot height restriction somewhere in there. And I can't remember exactly where.
There is a maximum building height of 50 feet.
Right. Which this building far exceeds.
Correct, that's existing, non-conforming, and it may continue.
Okay, so it
As
doesn't,
proposed.
so we don't need
Correct,
to change the zoning
correct.
related to that. Okay. So back to plan development. I didn't see anything else in there that would restrict us from granting their request.
I didn't either.
Ready to
Okay.
vote on that portion of this?
I am.
Do the findings first.
Right. So I'm going to get to the findings.
Findings.
Zoning map amendment for a plan development overlay district findings. Number one, all required public notice required for a zoning map amendment has been provided in accordance with applicable state and local laws. Finding is the applicant executed the notice mailing on July 12th, 2017, and posting of the properties on July 14th, 2017. The notice of public hearing was published in the Daily Herald newspaper on July 14th, 2017. A hearing notice was posted in City Hall on July 13th, 2017. All notification complies with the requirements of the zoning code. Does anyone take any issue with that? Okay, so we can vote on that? All right, let's do roll call.
Wait, we have to, is it?
I'm sorry,
affirmative?
motion.
Is it affirmative? We vote?
We need a motion and a second.
I vote that, I move that we accept finding number one.
I'll second that.
Okay, now roll call.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Writing.
Okay. Goslin?
Aye.
Harms?
Yes.
Joseph?
Aye.
Lalonde?
Yes.
McGrail?
Aye.
Peterson?
Aye.
And Schneider.
Great. Number two, all required public meetings and hearings have been held in accordance with the applicable state and local laws. Finding with the public hearing being conducted and concluded, this finding will be met.
I move we accept number two.
Second.
Banner.
We have a second?
Second.
Great, roll call, please.
Goslin,
Aye.
Harms,
Yes.
Joseph,
Aye.
Lalonde,
Yes.
McGrail,
Aye.
Peterson,
Yes.
and Schneider absent.
You guys mind if I read all these?
No, I don't mind.
I'd rather read them so the public can hear what we're doing. Number 3, the extent to which the proposed amendment to the official zoning map conforms generally to the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan and comprehensive plan land use map findings. The proposed amendment to the zoning map to add the plan development overlay meets 2 of the specified purposes for the plan development stated in the zoning code and would further the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan as stated in EREG's submitted application material, especially those related to affordable and accessible housing. The comprehensive plan land use map classifies the subject property as mixed use. The subject property is currently not utilized for mixed use purposes. As proposed, the plan development overlay would allow the subject property to become mixed use and be consistent with the map's classification with the subject property's zoning classification in the city's MU mixed-use zoning district. I just had one question on this. What are the 2 specified purposes that you refer to? Should clarify that.
It's to modify base district regulations to implement the comprehensive plan. And the other purpose that it meets are to provide opportunities for unique or mixed-use development.
Right. There's also,
And
there
there's
are
al-
others, but
Right, and there are also specified uses of the plan development in the zoning code, and the commission may add this to the finding that if you feel it's appropriate, that it meets 2 of the uses of a plan development, and those are to modify development regulations of this title, to implement policies in the comprehensive plan, and 2, to permit unique or mixed-use development. And I think staff would recommend that these 2 be added to your finding, that it does meet 2 of the specified uses of the plan, of the.
Yeah, and I wanted those
Plan
incorporated into the motion. Were you able to get that, Jenny?
Yes.
Great. Okay, with that clarification, are there any other questions? If not, a motion from this side of the room? We're going to just mix it up
oh,
tonight.
fine. I move to accept finding number 3, is it?
Correct.
As modified.
As modified, yes,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Second.
Great. Roll call, please.
Goslin,
Aye.
Harms,
Yes.
Joseph,
Aye.
Lalonde,
Yes.
McGrail,
Aye.
Peterson,
Aye.
and Schneider absent. Motion carried.
Okay. Okay, city zoning code review of specified conditions. I'm sorry, city zoning code section 5.704.d, review of specified conditions. Number 1 is the proposed zoning district and development it allows compatible with the existing use and zoning of nearby subject property. With conditions of approval as recommended by city staff, the subject property will remain in the mixed-use MU zoning district. Subject property occupies 12.2 acres of the northwest corner of a major arterial intersection in the city and is appropriate for a mix of uses. It has been classified in the MU mixed-use zoning district for over 7 years. No change to the underlying zoning classification is proposed. This zoning classification is consistent with the property's mixed-use land use map designation in the city's comprehensive plan, a designation the subject property has had for over 9 years. Proposed plan development overlay will add residential use to the subject property that is not now present on the property. The proposed plan development overlay introduces no land uses prohibited in the MU mixed-use zoning district. The plan development overlay introduces multifamily residential use to the subject property, a use that is already present in the area and proximate to the single-family area located west of the subject property. The proposed plan development overlay would be compatible with nearby land uses. Any discussion? If not,
No, but in the land use of the comprehensive plan, I believe there was a very lengthy, during the public hearing, we got a very lengthy memo from some of the people saying that it did not. It contradicted our comprehensive plan goals. There were some of them that they cited. And I just wanted to reiterate that one of the goals for the land use is to maintain a diversity of housing types, prices, and styles for all segments of our communities. And another goal is coordinate land use and transportation planning. I just want it to be known that we're going through these very quickly, but as you said, Tom, to start, that it is an emotional issue, and people that came to testify, we did listen, and I think that was a plea that we please listen to them, and I think we did. We deliberated. I personally, just because a lot of you made it personal, I've lived in Batavia all my life. I live a block and a half from the Campana building, and I feel what you do. I hesitate to go out onto Fabian Parkway with the traffic. I know there's a terrible problem, but according to our guidelines and our comprehensive plan, there's something, we made it for that reason, and these goals, and I think the public should know that we're not just rubber stamping something that, and especially with the conditions that we made, I think it's by thinking about it and proposing these conditions and the agreement with the applicant, that's why I think we're coming to our decisions. So, and I think they should know that.
thank you. Yeah, well said. You echo that. Any other comments?
Addressing the parking, I mean, I heard I heard many times it mentioned about the traffic, but I think that the traffic is already there. It's the west of the city, all the building that has been going on both in Batavia and Geneva. That's what's made the traffic so bad. And as far as the Campana building, there's going to be some developer that's going to come along and develop it, and it may be worse traffic than what is being proposed right now. So I think the traffic is going to be there. It's going to be more, because if they continue to develop more west of Randall Road, more houses, more traffic. That's kind of, we're at a standstill there.
Any other comments? Otherwise, we need a motion.
Also move.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Goslin?
Aye.
Harms?
Yes.
Joseph?
Aye.
Lalonde?
Yes.
McGrail?
Aye.
Peterson?
Aye.
And Schneider is absent. Motion carried.
Number 2, is there evidence to suggest that property values will be diminished by the particular zoning restriction changes? Finding, with conditions of approval as recommended by city staff, no specific evidence was provided at the public hearing to suggest that the value of the subject property or other properties would be diminished by the proposed plan development overlay. Well, there was a lot of evidence provided. I guess
Both ways.
you can, it's subjective to a degree. I don't know if you think, have any further specific comments related to that, but obviously that's a emotional issue. Interestingly enough, in design review, when we get to that, it does talk about the public safety, health, and welfare. I'm just going to read it at this point because I think it's relevant to this topic. The purpose of the design review is to protect public health, safety, and general welfare, and to preserve and enhance property values by promoting and maintaining a functional and aesthetic community character founded on the principles of sound site planning, urban design, architecture, landscape design, energy efficiency, sensitive to the natural environment, consistent with the policies and guidelines of the comprehensive plan and adopted design guidelines. And it goes into more specifics, but it does talk about property values in that statement. So if anyone feels like there was testimony that can, I guess, be substantiated related to that, we should talk about that now.
I don't think we know one way or the
I
other.
mean, honestly, I
Yeah,
couldn't
it's-
say. I've heard testimony on both sides of the issue.
Right, that's
I
to
think
be
if the project's
determined.
well done, it shouldn't
Could add.
have any
Right.
significant impact. Any other thoughts?
Agreed. I haven't seen any hard data or anything to really confirm either way. And if you have a building like that goes into disrepair, that could reduce the values more than anything else.
Well, and
Nothing that convinced me that this project would diminish values.
if it's in fact improved with this project,
Correct.
it should help property values adjacent to it. I think any property that goes into disrepair, you could argue that same condition.
Right.
That's right.
Any further discussion? If not, we need a motion for number 2.
Which side of the room's turn is it?
Oh, that's,
So moved. For number 2.
Second.
okay, roll call, please.
Goslin,
Aye.
Harms,
Yes.
Joseph,
Aye.
Lalonde,
Yes.
McGrail,
Aye.
Peterson,
Aye.
and Schneider absent. Motion carried.
Item number 3 is subject to item number 2. And since we don't believe that there is any diminishment of property values, do we still need to find in favor of this motion?
Yes.
Yeah.
Or this finding, I'm sorry. Okay, item number 3, if any property values are diminished, does the diminishment promote the health, safety, morals, or general welfare of the public? Finding, the conditions of approval as recommended by city staff, there is no specific evidence presented at the public hearing that property values would be diminished, therefore this finding is not applicable.
Me too.
But we still
Come
need to
take a vote on
Yeah.
vote on it.
being applicable.
Okay, I'll so move that we accept number 3, finding number 3.
Second.
Great, roll call.
Goslin,
Aye.
Harms,
Yes.
Joseph,
Aye.
Lalonde,
Yes.
McGrail,
Aye.
Peterson,
Aye.
and Schneider absent. Motion carried.
Okay. Item number 4, does the proposed zoning change provide a greater relative gain to the public as compared to the hardship imposed on the individual property owner? Finding, with conditions of approval as recommended by city staff, the proposed plan development overlay would provide housing types the city of Batavia has identified as being needed in the community. Adding the proposed housing types to the community would benefit the public. The requirements of the city's zoning code and requirements imposed by other jurisdictions would impose practical difficulties for an owner to establish a mixed-use development on the subject property.
I move we accept finding number 4.
I'll second that.
Before we vote on that, it talks about being needed in the community, and I know that we're at or exceed our City of Batavia goals, but maybe not the broader community of Kane County.
Well, there is really no quantification in the zoning code or comprehensive plan as to how many units of affordable, non-affordable, I strike that, affordable or otherwise we should provide, or how many units of accessible housing we should provide. But the comprehensive plan does identify a need for affordable housing and accessible housing, and this would add to the number of affordable and accessible units.
Yeah, I understood we had a specific percentage goal in the community.
Under the state law, there is a 10% minimum
Right.
requirement. We are at 11.4 based on the last numbers that were done by IDA. We don't know what the current day numbers are. Those were about 4 years ago, I should say. So we do not know what they are, but based on the trends of development that we've had in the community in the last 4 years, we have not had appreciable numbers of affordable housing built in the community at this point.
Okay. I know we added, or it's actually under construction, I think it's a senior
Windmill Manor.
or age limited.
Windmill Manor,
Yeah.
yes. And that's under construction still,
Does that
so,
fall into this category of
It-
affordable?
it would,
Because it's
yes.
subsidized?
yes.
And is that in the 11.4%?
No, because it hasn't been completed yet, so that has not been counted towards any of our numbers yet.
Okay. All right, I'm sorry, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, roll call?
Goslin,
Aye.
Harms,
Yes.
Joseph,
Aye.
Lalonde,
No.
McGrail,
No.
and Peterson.
Aye.
4 ayes, 2 nays, motion carried. Schneider absent.
Number 5, is the subject property suitable for the zoned purpose? Finding, with conditions of approval as recommended by city staff, the proposed plan development overlay would transform the existing non-conforming use of the building on the subject property to a mixed-use building. Mixed use is required by the subject property's classification in the MU Mixed Use Zoning District. The subject property is currently deemed non-conforming because it has only limited commercial uses and lacks a mix of uses at this time. The current zoning classification is wholly consistent with the subject property's land use designation in the city's comprehensive plan. The subject property is suitable for the uses allowed in the MU Mixed Use Zoning District, and the subject property would remain classified in the MU Mixed Use Zoning District. A lot of words to basically say it's staying as it is. Any comments? Motion?
Also move. Do we accept condition number 5? Or finding number 5?
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Goslin,
Aye.
Harms,
Yes.
Joseph,
Yes.
Lalonde,
Yes.
McGrail,
Aye.
Peterson,
Aye.
and Schneider absent. Motion carried.
Number 6, has the length of time the subject property has been vacant as zoned been excessive considering the context of land development in the area in the vicinity of the subject property? Finding the subject property has not been vacant, but is only partially occupied at this time. The subject property has been underutilized for many years. The period of underuse has been significant. And we talked about the occupancy percentage last time. I think it's in the like 60% range. I just-
You mean that it's being used?
Currently.
60
Yes.
Okay.
Right. It's about 60% occupied. Any other thoughts on this topic? Okay,
My only thought from reading it is vacant means vacant. If they had intended underutilized to be the requirement, they would have used the term underutilized. It's more than half occupied. To me, that does not seem vacant.
Agreed.
yeah, that's interesting. It's kind of an all or nothing statement.
Staff have any?
Yeah, staff, you have any thoughts on that?
Well, the way the finding was read, it acknowledges that the property has not been vacant. If the commission feels it's appropriate, it can add a statement on there saying that, this finding is not applicable.
Well, where does the findings that we've got here that we've got to decide, where do those come from? If it's not applicable,
State law.
Those are the LaSalle factors essentially for zoning. That's what
so
these are.
I think it would have to be applicable.
Well, in your action on finding number 3 of these specified conditions, part of the finding included the wording, "This finding is not applicable." So you've already done that with a previous finding, but you've kind of, through the way the finding was read, it explains some of the other factors that may go into this, but when you strip it down to the essentials, it's asking about the period of vacancy, and the property is not vacant, so you can deem the finding not applicable.
Interesting.
And I'm not sure I quite follow, because if these are coming from the state, can we decide that other findings are just not applicable and disregard them?
I ask the attorney to maybe.
Well, I think the point is that you would find that by this standard does not support a decision in favor of the change of zoning. So in that sense, it's not applicable to your decision. It's not that you can erase it. It continues to be one of the standards no matter what you do. So if you're more comfortable finding that it would not support a zoning map amendment, you could state it that way, perhaps.
Because as I look at it, this is one of the findings we've got to come to. And I'm much in favor for our role being to look at what the rules are, what the facts are, apply the two together, and let those dictate what the decision is. And to me, as reading it, as I read it, it's not vacant.
That's right.
The finding, though, says that it has not been vacant, but it is only partially occupied at the time. So doesn't that clarify it?
But still, it's not.
Well, I guess perhaps my question is, what I think as the length of the time the property been vacant, zoned as zoned been excessive, and if we made a motion in the affirmative saying the length of time it has been vacant has been excessive, it would seem to me the vote would be in the negative, and that we would find against that finding, because it hasn't been vacant.
When we've done this before, it's been vacant properties. Largely vacant properties, and I think that's what this is referring to.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I said, I'm sorry, when we've done a planned development before, it's largely been related to vacant properties. So I'm just curious if that's why what that refers to. Maybe it isn't applicable to a property that is occupied.
Again, I'm just reading what the finding is, and it would seem to me we'd make a motion in the affirmative, but at least as I look at it, it's not vacant, and as we've been voting yes to most of these things, I don't, since it's not vacant, I don't think I would be able to vote yes on that.
I would agree, but we've been advised that we can rule it not applicable.
Yes, I would think.
Because of the fact that it's a structure that's not fully vacant. Right. If I may ask the attorney, in this case, these are the LaSalle factors that, have been established by court precedent. And I guess the question here would be is, the building is not completely vacant, but there has been some excessive vacancy. So does that apply to this? And then the second part to that is, because of the fact that this is because of the zoning approval that we're looking at here, I don't believe that the Plan Commission needs to find in the affirmative for all of the findings in order to make an opinion either way necessarily. Is that?
Take your second question first. It is not a requirement that all of the LaSalle factors apply to any particular petition. They are set out 8 in number, and they are to guide your decision. So whatever your finding is about this particular statement, it doesn't control the final decision overall. Secondly, the standard comes from established case law. It's repeated in your city code. And the word vacant is what was the origin of this factor. So on that basis, again, you may decide that it is not a factor that would support a petition for zoning amendment in this case. I do think also you could find that even though it doesn't strictly apply, that the underutilization of the building is a factor in your decision, if you wish. So that, you've got an array of options here.
So what I'm hearing is that if we vote in the negative on number 6, but either all, but 6 of the 7, the other 6 were voted in the affirmative, we can still approve the zoning amendments in spite of the negative on one of them.
That is correct, if that's your judgment.
Thank-
Any other discussion? So we could deem it not applicable. We could vote, and I guess based on the strict wording, which I think we would have to,
Well, and to me, it's not even strict wording. Vacant, to me, means vacant. Excessively underused, 60% occupancy, to me, at least currently, doesn't seem that.
I agree.
so what are the thoughts?
Well,
Vote and see where we end up?
Yep, I guess, I just, yeah.
Okay. So we need a motion, and I would say the motion should be in the affirmative,
I move
so
that
we're
we,
clear.
I move that we accept finding number 6, having to do with the, for the zoning.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Goslin?
Nay.
Harms?
No.
Joseph?
nay.
Lalonde?
No.
McGrail?
No.
Peterson?
Aye.
And Schneider absent. Motion failed.
5-1. Okay, number 7, is there a community need for the proposed zoning or use? Finding, the city has identified a need for the City of Batavia comprehensive plan to diversify the types of residents in the city, including adding rental units, affordable units, and accessible units. Plan development overlay would facilitate redevelopment of the subject property with such residences. Any discussion? I mean, this is kind of parallels number 4 in my
Right.
mind,
Right, it's
kind of a repeat.
a repeat, right. I move that we accept finding number 7.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Goslin?
Aye.
Harms?
Yes.
Joseph?
Aye.
Lalonde?
Yes.
McGrail?
Aye.
Peterson?
Aye.
And Schneider absent. Motion carried.
All right. Next step, and staff, correct me if I'm wrong, would be a vote for recommendation for the plan development overlay.
Correct, and you can consider the staff recommended conditions as part of your motion.
Okay, any comments, questions related to that before we vote?
Yeah, I have a question about the controlled entrances versus the not controlled entrances. I wanted to know, the developer said there was the use of a card to gain entrance. That's the controlled entrances. There are other entrances, though, that the residents can leave the building but not come back in? Is that how it works?
There are 2 primary entrances to the building, one in the front and one in the back. There's an entrance on the north side as well that takes you out to the rear parking and to the tot lot. and the playing field back there. So all of the entrances that would take tenants to the residential portions of the building would be controlled with a card access or a key, most likely a card access. So all three of those entrances would require tenants to swipe a card or similar kind of thing. In the front entrance, there will be a buzzer system, an intercom system that will allow visitors to buzz people that they're visiting there. And we haven't figured out exactly whether it will be push-button access that will allow people into the building. It's such a big building that I think our preference is probably to have the tenants come and get their visitors at the front door. So there are effectively three entrances.
I was just concerned because the code says 13 entrances, and you're looking for a variance on that, right? Reducing the number of entrances
That is a requirement in the mixed-use
in the
district.
mixed-use district. My concern was that, would the fire department object to that? I mean, just three
I
exits?
don't know all of the multifamily buildings in Batavia or in Geneva. I suspect for a building that has 80 units, it's not atypical to have no more than three entrances there. My understanding of the requirement for more than three entrances is it was particular to what the mixed-use zoning was envisioning in terms of a variety of commercial tenants in there. And so the three entrances, and when I say three entrances, it's three residential entrances, and then there are entrances to the commercial spaces as well. So for example, there's an entrance on the south side to the mattress store. There are separate entrances in the west wing to the recreational uses that are over there. So, we have essentially laid out the entrances in a way that makes sense for the programmatic uses of the building.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay.
Any other of the
In the
requested
motion,
modifications?
in the motion for this subject, do we also include the modifications that were discussed and
Yes. Yes, the motion, if the commission chooses
Modifications
to
and-
act that way, to include the modifications
and
as,
conditions?
and conditions as they
Okay,
appear in the
that's-
staff
it said
report.
conditions. Okay.
Could you just clarify again the added condition number 2?
If you look first at the conditions for the preliminary plat of subdivision. The conditions for the preliminary and final plat of subdivision approval include the specification that a declaration of covenants, conditions, restrictions, and easements are to include deeming the property as one zoning lot per the city zoning code, and also that the owner of any subdivided parcel on this property shall not have the right to request or obtain any amendment to the plan development overlay zoning for the entire zoning lot without the consent of the owners of the other subdivided parcels. We kind of put some of the specifications for the covenants, conditions, restrictions, and easement in the plat of subdivision condition. Now, if we go back, what we're talking about is to require that the applicant have these conditions, covenants, conditions, restrictions, and easements drafted, recorded with the property, so they apply to the property. So in the plan development, we're simply requiring these to be recorded so that these covenants, conditions, restrictions, and easements run with the land. And in the subdivision section, we're kind of breaking out some of the specifications of what this document would contain.
Okay.
Typically, the conditions, covenants, and restrictions would be recorded concurrently with the plat of subdivision. That's typically what would happen, so that they would be tied together.
Okay. But the goal is, even though it's subdivided, to be used as one property.
As one.
Yes. this will restrict any potential kind of separate uses of the property as the public expressed concern about.
Contrary to what you're approving this evening. They can be separate uses, but obviously there's a residential component and a non-residential component. But they can't be used differently than what you're essentially approving tonight, or recommending for approval.
Okay, thank you. The added items, conditions 17 through 21, all are subject to historic preservation, or KDOT and city staff, as the case may be. I kind of have mixed feelings about that, because these are important issues to us, but the reality of it is they're probably going to usurp what we're requesting here. We could put stronger language in there and not make it subject to. Just a thought I had.
Are we allowed? I
Doesn't,
mean,
we can do that. It doesn't mean that city council can't modify that if you feel strongly enough about those conditions. Just bringing up the question to see if anyone has any concerns, as I do.
May I say something about that?
Absolutely.
My only concern with that approach, Mr. Chairman, is that I don't want to get into a situation where we have conflicting regulatory requirements, where we have one set of requirements from the city of Batavia and another set of requirements from the State Historic Preservation Office and the National Park Service. These items have not been vetted and reviewed with the SHPO because they were new last time. We've begun that conversation with them, but we are still working through that process with them. And again, they are potentially, if the Historic Preservation Office says we are not going to allow you to do that, I'm not sure where that leaves this project.
Correct. And I fully understand that.
Okay.
I'm just bringing up to the fellow commissioners that if it's important enough to us, we can make that a condition that's not subject to, which means that obviously the State Historic Agency would have to buy into these conditions or
right.
some modification of them, depending on what city council does with our recommendation.
That's why I asked at the beginning whether they had seen this yet, our conditions, or had discussed them, and they haven't yet. Right.
We have begun that conversation. We've had an initial conversation with Anthony Rubano at Springfield, at the State Historic Preservation Office, but they need to see drawings, basically, and we are just now beginning to develop those drawings that would cover these issues, particularly the issue of the sidewalk. So that's the concern. It's hard to have a discussion with the state in the abstract. They want to see an actual drawing. Well, what are you actually proposing here?
I guess I'm trying to find a balance, and not having dealt with the state agency, and I know they want to strictly adhere to kind of the historic integrity of the property and the building, yet it's a housing development. And so from that perspective, I guess I'm sympathetic to what a good housing development should include. And I feel like our hands are being tied to some degree
Right.
in what we're asking you to do to make this a good, livable site.
I mean, let's be clear. We support the concepts in all of these conditions here. I will just say that our initial conversation with Anthony Rubano at the State Historic Preservation Office was, well, I'm not sure about that, and we need to see what the drawings say. So that's where we are with the state. And again, without ultimately his approval and Washington's approval of the tax credits, we don't have a project.
And once it leaves this forum, we don't have another opportunity to review it. So
Correct. You don't have an
go
opportunity
to city
to review it.
council, and I don't know if you would have answers, because the city council is now going to be at some point considering this. I don't know what meeting it would go to if it got approved tonight.
With your recommendations and concluding of your review, we would have this on a committee of the whole agenda for the 19th.
As much of that dialogue that can occur between now and then
We have started.
certainly would be helpful for city council
Understood.
in making a determination on our recommendations. So does anybody else have those strong feelings that I do about?
I would agree that all 5 are good conditions, and would love to see them. However, because of the nature, the historic nature of the building, there are other issues that we would have done differently, but for the state requirements. I don't think any of these, and again, it's not the applicant saying no. If the state were to come in and say no, I don't think any of these are so significant that they should hold the project back, would be my thought.
But but I see it as, in some of the findings that we've already approved, being, a case in point would be the one that we approved that ensured safety and health, public health. And I feel one of the conditions that said, refers to the sidewalk around the speedway, would affect
Safety.
the safety of the residents.
I agree.
Therefore, that would negate our affirmative vote for the finding, if the Preservation Committee will not allow that.
As well as 21.
Yeah. number 20. So I don't know where that leaves it. Again, kind of obfuscates the whole.
Any staff have any thoughts on that?
Well, on 21, access is controlled by KDOT, so if KDOT deems that a restriction is necessary or not necessary, I think we have to defer to their decision, because that's really their road, and they're the ones that make the decisions on how it's accessed. They have said that they are considering making this a right-in, right-out only anyway, so I doubt that they will have an objection to that, if that's imposed. But, I think we have to a certain extent, defer to agencies that have their own authority over their own facilities and such, so.
I agree, though. I think 17 is important enough as safety to.
I'm sorry, what, Bill?
I agree. I think 17 with the sidewalks is important enough of a safety issue.
Do not make it subject to? Anyone else?
So,
You'd be okay if we modified that?
yeah, with that one, I would be, yeah,
Not
because I
making it
feel it's a
subject
safety issue, too. Yeah.
My thought would be, again, I think the sidewalk certainly is good for safety. However, the lack of a sidewalk, to me, does not make it an unsafe condition. So I'm fine with 17 as written.
So it sounds like we have 5 that would want to modify it, and 1 that is fine with it as written, but would you accept it if it was modified?
My thought would be I don't want to hold up, if everything else with this project is going through, I would not want that one issue to hold up the project.
Again, this is a recommendation to city council. City council can modify our recommendation in any way, shape, or form they desire. So if they
Fair
feel
enough.
strongly enough that they want to change that back to subject to, they can do that, correct?
Yes.
Any of the other items? I feel strongly about 18, 19. It's kind of a limited application with the benches and receptacles. But I would be quite surprised, actually, if the State Historic Preservation Agency didn't allow trash receptacles and benches.
So 20 would be the one that,
I think vehicle loading here, I don't see why the state agency would have an issue with that. They already have the space available. And then the only one, I think, number 21 with KDOT, I would have to agree that they're gonna do what they feel is as safe as possible for that access point. So I'm not overly concerned about that, but for myself, 17 through 20 should remove subject to.
Yeah, I would hate to see this held up. That's my only problem with it, is by eliminating all that
Well,
project.
first of all, we
Wouldn't
haven't
eliminate.
voted,
No,
so we don't know. It could be no, which would stop right here, or go to city council and they would have to overrule us. Or we could vote yes and it would go to city council and they could change it back if they feel like that is critical to the project moving forward and that's what city council wants.
I understand.
I'm just trying to stand behind what our purpose is here, and I think our purpose is to have a development that serves the needs of the occupants, the people who are going to be living there as best possible. Again, it's one person opinion, so if the balance don't want to change it, what we would do is just entertain a motion, however the majority feels they want this modified, and move on. Right now, we've said 17, we would remove the language, subject to.
And that's kind of where I stand. I would be
Okay,
on just number
but
7.
not the others.
They're not.
Anybody else? Yes, no? Just 17?
Yeah, we'll go with that, just 17.
Just 17, Bill?
Yeah, I mean, 17 for sure, kind of in between with 18. But, I mean,
Tom,
I'm
you
not
already
going to
said-
vote against it if we remove subject to.
Just on 17,
However,
though.
again, I wouldn't vote no if it had subject to.
Okay. So we would, I think we're ready for a motion to that effect with that modification to staff recommendations. And that's a motion to recommend the zoning map amendment for plan development overlay district with the listed modifications 1 through 10 and conditions 1 through 21 with the modification to number 17, removing subject to historic preservation approvals. Did I get it all?
I think you did. I think you did it.
Would you just be removing the words "to historic preservation"?
Leave,
Approvals, leaving
leave
it
subject to
Subject to.
staff approval. I'm sorry.
City staff approval.
So let me restate that. It would state, subject to city staff approval, and remove the wording historic preservation approvals and. Get that, Jenny? Okay, so we need a motion.
I so move.
And I'll second it.
Bill seconded it.
I'm sorry.
Beat you to it.
Okay, that's all
All
right.
right. Roll call.
Goslin,
Aye.
Harms,
yes.
Joseph,
Aye.
Lalonde,
No.
McGrail,
aye.
Peterson,
Aye.
and Schneider absent. Motion carried.
Great. Okay, I'm going to move to preliminary final plat of subdivision. I think that'll be fairly quick, and then we can get into the design review. Everybody okay with that? All right, any discussion, any questions of the applicant or staff before I read this? All right. Staff recommends the commission recommend city council approval of the preliminary Final plat of subdivision subject to the conditions listed below. The commission may amend or remove any of these conditions or add conditions it deems needed. I don't need to read the conditions. You all have those in front of you. Did add the fourth condition, and we've had some discussion on that specific item. Any discussion? Otherwise, we need a motion.
I move we accept.
We are recommending city council approval.
Right.
That's what you need to say.
Number one?
No,
Wait,
No,
do we-
these are
the
just
motion
conditions.
should be to recommend
Recommend.
city council approval. Thank you.
of
Thank
the
you.
Preliminary final plat of subdivision, subject to the conditions.
Thank you. All right. We need a second.
I'll second it.
All right. Roll call, please.
Goslin?
Aye.
Harms?
Yes.
Josa?
Aye.
Lalonde?
Yes.
McGrail?
Aye.
Peterson?
Aye.
And Schneider absent. Motion carried.
Great. Okay, moving on to design review. Any discussions? Got to be something. You love it all. Anything? I had questions.
Go ahead, maybe I'm trying to.
Kind of picking up where we left off last time. We had been back and forth reviewing the plans. I guess a couple concerns I have. One, I went out there today just to look at the landscaping along the west property line. And, it's not impressive.
No.
A lot of scrub bushes, sumac. The adjacent properties are very close to this property. You can see them through the screening. And I understand that that is a property that's not controlled by this development. Correct. It's a sliver of land that's
Right.
controlled by the owner to the north. So in theory, he could come out and clear that anytime he wants.
Isn't it the township?
No, it's unincorporated, but it's owned by the property owner to the north, actually.
So I guess my concern is that we typically would require a landscape buffer in that location, and yet there's no landscaping proposed along that property line. And I'm not saying we force landscaping to be added, but could we make a condition that if that buffer was ever removed, then landscaping would be required to be put in? This is typically what you would do with a development like this. I
It's true. It's true.
don't know if there's any thoughts about that.
A good call. No.
Good catch.
I also noticed that the northwest corner, again, it's fairly open. There's not much landscaping in that corner. And I would suggest that we require enhancement of the landscaping in that area.
Would you
Bring it down a little bit.
point that out to me, please?
I can't reach
that
high.
Well, point.
Yeah, we're,
Joel replaced his.
yeah.
I
Were
think
the-
those are just existing trees,
Okay.
if I recall.
Oh, okay.
And I'm not texting, I'm looking at photos.
Yeah.
Because I took some photos.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell.
If Drew's,
I was going to go to the landscape plan, because this is a site plan with landscaping, but I wanted to move
Oh, okay.
down to that.
That'd be great.
Drew. Yeah. Okay. Now
Our landscape ordinance, talks broadly about trees, size of trees, spacing of trees, shrubs. So I don't know specifically, but I think we could probably leave it in the hands of staff to
I think that, yeah.
review that based on condition placed in the design review.
So you're suggesting just in the northwest corner, but nothing to the north of the shot lot and volleyball court or whatever?
That is heavily landscaped, that's that drainage easement, and it's a commercial property to the north. So I'm more concerned about the residences and giving them the appropriate screening, especially with the new lighting that is proposed, even though they're cut-off fixtures. You know, you look towards the light, you're still going to see the light source, even though it's a cutoff. It won't, you know, the light won't theoretically go over the property line.
One thing I would suggest is to provide a little more direction than just to add landscaping. Are you looking for something that's going to provide a year-round green barrier so that nobody would ever see what's going on the other side of that green barrier? Or is it to add trees kind of with the quantity that you see along the north edge of the parking lot, between the parking lot and the soccer field? Are you looking for trees to be planted like with that kind of density?
No, I would go to the ordinance and look to landscaping adjacent to adjacent properties.
There really isn't a code requirement that specifies,
Perimeter landscape
Right.
area planting standards.
no,
Trees with a minimum size specified, 1 tree per 25 feet, and then shrubs with a minimum size specified. Shrubs shall be planted at a minimum rate of 5 shrubs per tree. So
With the purpose being screening, would that?
I think
be
that's what this
appropriate?
is for.
Do you want it to be a screened landscaping,
I would agree.
rather, rather than small shrubs and things that we've talked
Well, a
about?
combination. I mean, if there's trees there now, you probably don't need to add a lot of trees.
And what's the dimension between the western edge of the parking lot and the lot line? It doesn't look like there's a whole lot of room, yeah, right in there.
It's like about 10 feet,
Is it? Okay, there's enough.
half a parking stall. Yeah, there isn't a lot of room.
Is
Which
that
is
an
really,
east?
I don't
for the
know
most part,
what
where
that
you want
sliver
it.
of land what
Yeah.
purpose it would ever serve. And there would really be no reason for that landscaping to be removed, but I guess to protect those property owners, I'd like to see a condition placed on
It could potentially be used for access, and that might have been the original
Right.
idea behind it, is to provide Fabian access.
and obviously you'd have to clear it to do that.
Absolutely.
So Joel, is that enough clarification on that northwest corner? Do you want a little more?
Now, when you say the northwest corner, how far south from the corner of the property do you want this?
You really have to
apply?
go out there and look. The idea is to, I think, significantly visually screen the property, comparable to what exists along the west property line now. Is that enough?
Would you say it's north of the north line of the building? If you, as you come around here. That's kind of where it
Yeah, it
starts
was
to
right
get
in this
sparse.
corner.
Right. But I'm still at this point north.
Right.
So if we took a line west of the north line of the west wing, and extended that west,
Up to the,
and then up to the.
north corner.
Here, because that's kind
So
of,
would that be,
Yeah, so he's
Here,
pointing you to
west.
it on the screen. So from that point north,
right.
I mean, that's probably more than you need, quite frankly. But I guess as a safety valve, you could do that.
So you would like these are, what you were reading from are planting that's required in where we have a requirement for a perimeter landscape area. And that's really geared toward screening parking areas and other things from the street. But if you would
Okay.
like this to apply to the lineal distance from the extension of the north line of the existing west wing up through the north end of the property, if you would like that lineal dimension and the requirement for trees and shrubs as specified in this section of the code applied to that segment of the property, you can certainly make that, that's a clear recommendation. Whether or not it's going to get to what you envision, what you're envisioning now is a screen, it would probably take a period of time to get the trees to a mature growth, if not the shrubs to get to a mature growth. And if you overcrowd the trees, they're going to crowd each other out and compete for resources. So you may not achieve that screen initially that you envision, but at least there's something that we can apply objectively.
That's fine with me. Is everybody okay with that?
That's fine with me. For me, for the screening, it would seem that that should extend farther south through the parking, because what we're talking about is if that 30-foot strip is cleared out and that's open, with the trees
Okay.
going in the distance,
There's
we've got land.
2 points here. One is that would be a condition if that existing landscaping was ever removed.
Correct.
Then he would have to add landscaping.
Correct, okay, so when you were talking about from the north wall of the west wing heading north, that's current and not, okay. I thought you were referring to
Yeah,
if
so there's
that
2
area is
separate-
clear. Gotcha.
One would be, it has to be planted now in the north end of that. The second
Gotcha.
one would be in the future, if ever.
And that second one would extend
Right.
south. Okay.
Everybody okay with that? I noticed the trash oh, sorry.
Why don't you go ahead? This is Tim Brown from Erickson Engineering, our civil engineer.
Good evening.
Good evening.
The 10-foot line that you guys see there dotted out, that was a utility easement that was required by the city. I know we will have at least our water main in there. I don't know if trees can be planted over that. I think shrubs might be able to, but trees with large root balls,
Yeah, probably don't want,
right?
I don't
might
want to
be an
plant
issue.
trees over the water main. So maybe no trees, just shrubs if ever. And then, again, I
You just want it for screening, Eddie.
honestly don't expect that ever to be removed.
Right.
Because I don't know why anyone would want to use that for access when he can get out on 31. But- Okay. Any other comments, questions on that?
It's that's just from going down,
Yep.
not from the western edge of that going up.
It's going to come down to the southwest corner of the parking lot.
Right.
Again, that's utility easement, so you couldn't plant anything significant there.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, for the buffer though, I would think some sort of an evergreen that
I'm
gets
thinking
to 8, 10,
arborvitae.
I was
12
thinking
feet.
You know, when in doubt, plant arborvitae. They'll grow fast.
I would hope would not
And they
disrupt
provide the,
anything.
We're all experts on arborvitae, right?
No,
Been there,
not
done that
necessarily
before.
fans, but not a big fan, but I am, we know a little about it.
right, but now I'm hearing 2 different things. Do you want the requirement for the landscaping to go from the south edge of that parking area all the way up to the north corner? Or, because initially it was from the north line of the existing west wing extended, and go apply the code requirement for plantings into from that area north?
Understanding that we can't plant any significant trees in that easement.
Easement, right.
We could plant north of the parking lot. There could be trees added there. But quite frankly, I'd be fine if it's arborvitae all the way up.
So you would like arborvitae planted from the northwest corner of the property, extending southward to what point extending southward?
I'd say approximately the northwest corner of the parking lot.
Okay.
right?
So,
Southwest.
Southwest.
well, initially the northwest, and then if landscaping was removed in the future, then it would extend from there to the south, the other end of the parking lot.
You were talking about the northwest corner of the property. Drew, can you?
I really
put the
want to
cursor on
reach
the
up there and
northwest
point, but
corner
I
of the
can't.
property?
I'm too short.
No, it goes a little bit further. Yeah, right there. That's the northwest corner of the property.
Yep,
Is that where you want the planting to begin?
start, yes.
And then it extends south to
Right
that right there?
Yep,
Okay.
And
okay.
that's if that's removed?
Nope, that's in.
That's,
This is it.
And then the balance of the parking lot would be if it's ever removed to the west.
okay.
Unless you want to just put it all in. Might be easier.
To start with.
You know,
Never mind.
a few $1 million here, a few $1 million there, you're talking about real money at some point, so. Yes, we can live with that, Mr.
All
Chairman.
right, thank you. I noticed the trash enclosure is right at the end of the access drive on the rear of the building. And I don't know if that's the best location. Is that the only trash enclosure? So all residents have to find their way down there? See it down in that corner there, Drew? Oh, he's got it.
Down there.
That trash enclosure is for the commercial tenant, and then there's another trash enclosure to the north is for the commercial tenant. All the trash for the residents will be taken out of a trash chute at the lower level and down into a trash room coming
Oh,
off the
okay.
rear, so that there's no exterior tenant trash. They'll have an inside trash chute down to a trash room on the first floor. Actually, it'll be a floor that we lower down to grade so we can roll out the trash to the truck. So those are just commercial.
Okay.
That's good.
I don't particularly like that location, but,
Well, they're brick wall enclosures, stone caps, and
right, I saw that.
all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's right on the next page.
Yeah, I think we.
That's big enough I can see it, but.
Well, I think also we have to,
Can't read.
we have to reserve all our ideas, and we have to refine them as we go as well. You know, we have to say, we're going to have these two, we'll enclose them, and if it gets to be better, we can make it better.
Pros and cons, I mean, you're bringing in the trash, you know,
Well, the
the garbage
problem,
truck further into the property if you
Yeah.
move.
the trash comes out of the door right there where that trash enclosure is, so that's why we put it there.
That's-
We don't want it,
That work.
we don't want it stacking up in another container that's not near the store.
Okay.
We want it in the enclosure.
And you don't own the property directly south of that?
No,
The property line's right there?
that's right, it's right against that retaining wall.
I just wonder if there could be some landscaping there instead of pavement.
Yeah, we kind of run out of space. We'll look at it, though.
Well, even if you just, oh, okay,
It's a,
Never
yeah, it's a
mind.
retaining, wall. It's a change in grade.
that's right, that's higher. So coming in, you're not gonna necessarily.
Right. Actually, you won't see that much of it, right?
First thing, you won't see the trash
Right.
enclosure.
It's down.
When I pulled in there today, I noticed that loading dock had a truck. And I'm just looking at your plan, I'm like, that truck was 3/4 into that aisle, and it wasn't a semi. I know we talked about this a little bit last time, but I have some concerns about that truck being there, and I think residents are gonna be using that parking in the back. I know you said the front parking is for residents, but there's no restriction, and they'll go to the closest store they can.
So we've been running auto turn here. Tim can speak to that a little bit.
So you can see where the existing or truck dock is almost parallel with the garbage, the trash enclosure we were just talking about.
Yeah.
We've been working with the current mattress tenant to verify the size of truck that can be utilized. And we have a couple of solutions that will involve potentially, we're going to push into the building.
Well, or
Or a
the
parallel.
solution is to park basically parallel to the building. And so the truck would essentially be unloading off the side and to the right of it into the loading dock. So there may have to be a movable dock structure in order to serve the back of the building.
So you're gonna solve that issue?
Yes,
Correct, yeah.
I think that's all I want to hear, and make that a condition,
yes.
that you won't have trucks perpendicular to the wall.
No, we agree.
It looks like you have about 30 feet before it gets into the drive aisle.
Right.
So any truck bigger than that is going to be blocking access.
Correct. We've been working on that directly with the tenant.
Okay. You have some mechanical equipment in the front, and I noticed that's existing. You're proposing to screen it with landscaping. You've got the consistent hedgerow along the whole front of the building. It's down on the existing south wing.
Yes, and we noticed that one of those machines is no longer functioning, the one that's further north, and so that machine can be removed. The one to the south is actually serving the mattress store space, so that one will need to stay there, and we'll screen that one as shown on the plan.
It looks like it's already screened. Some pretty heavy,
In a manner of speaking, yes.
whatever they are, yew bushes or... Any other outside grade-mounted mechanical equipment?
No.
No?
I mean, where's the transformer, Dennis?
Trent? Saw that. It looked like you're adding screening all along that side of the building.
Right here?
Right there, John.
Yep.
And you got landscaping in front of that? As long as it meets ComEd requirements, because I know they need minimum clearances for access.
Yes.
It's not ComEd, it's ours. Not ComEd, it's ours.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Tom,
City of Batavia.
can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
David, going back to that non-functioning HVAC piece of equipment, would it be your intention not to install the 2 east-west rows of shrubs? You would remove it, and then you wouldn't be installing those 2?
Assuming we can take that equipment out, and we need to confirm that it's actually not functional. When we've been there looking at it, it's not doing anything. So assuming that we can take it out, we will not put in those 2 east-west rows, correct?
This brings up a question. I think last time you mentioned that it's going to be lawn area behind that
Right.
hedgerow.
Right.
20 feet or how much? 10 feet?
20 in the
Right
front, 10, maybe 10 there, looks like.
Yeah, it's actually, it's about 25 in the, this section here.
The
and it's-
original portion
yeah,
of the building.
Yeah, and so Dennis is saying that we want to actually move this out to line it up consistently across the front, so not to have this step back that you see there.
Yeah, I was just thinking for maintenance, it might be a little easier if you had a little more room back there and,
Yep.
those legs that actually interrupt access.
Right.
You have that middle section right now where no one can get in there.
Well, right, and so the idea is to line it up with the front face of the tower, so.
Yeah, I honestly don't think you need those legs.
No.
I don't know who's going to see that from the side.
This,
No, those 2 short ones on both sides of the mechanical units.
Yeah.
Unless you wanted to do something on the very end.
instead to have just one
Yeah, you kind of have it already with
ties
the-
back there.
Yeah.
Well, you already have the planting adjacent to the parking lot, so anybody who was looking down there, that would block their view substantially, so.
Okay, I mean,
Certainly easier for maintenance.
Right.
yeah,
Just for maintenance reasons. And there's no overhangs on this building, so
correct,
it's going to get sunshine, it's going to get water.
right.
Okay. It should be viable. Could you clarify what you're doing to the existing commercial space on the primarily west and then that whole west wing? Are you proposing any improvements to those portions of this building? Because they're, with all due respect to the owner, they're not the most attractive architectural components of the project.
Right.
And it'd be nice to see some enhancements.
So actually, in the bridge structure, in the former loading dock, we are inserting, there are 2 residential units in there, that because there's a piece of the building, the historic building that connects, we can't put residential units in here. So we will substantially refurbish this piece of it and improve the visual appearance of that. As far as the exterior of this goes, it's really more of a repair. The condition of the roof, if the roof needs to be repaired, we'll put a new roof on it. To the extent that the metal siding is damaged, we will repair or replace the metal siding. It's going to look largely the way it looks today. It's perfectly functional for those folks there. We are going to be upgrading the sprinkler system inside their space. To the extent that their HVAC system is not adequate, we will address those issues. But as far as the visual appearance of that west wing, the only change is to the former loading dock area. Everything else will mostly resemble what it looks like today.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody?
We have an upgrade to the parking lot though, too, basically.
Yeah, the whole parking lot will be redone, repaved, new landscape as you see it on the plan here. And there will be some additional screening that you don't have right now around that building, particularly to the south.
There'll be additional screening to the south.
See it in this line here?
Yeah, the dark line.
Oh, the south of that wing,
South of the west wing, correct.
not the south portion of the commercial.
Correct, just this,
End of the building.
this area here.
Yeah. You don't have a lot of room there
Right.
to do much, but it would be nice. It would have been nice to add some landscaping there. I don't know if anybody has seen it. I took photos, and it's it's a metal-sided building. Not too attractive.
Can I see those, Tom?
Sure. On the west wing is the same thing. And I like that you're doing something on the landscaping on the south side of that. Are those trees and shrubs? It'd be nice to have some trees in there.
I think there are a few trees that are in the parking islands, but most of the plantings along that south side are more shrub scale. Shrubs and lower, smaller plantings.
What's an LA3?
There's a schedule somewhere in the documents.
I guess if I went to a landscape plan, maybe that would be the place to find it.
Yeah, I think the second page you
I don't, yeah. Well, SP1 has landscaping on it. Did we get a landscape plan?
LA3 is the light fixtures.
Oh, here, just
Looking at documents here. LP1, no?
Do you have the planning list?
Up on the
There it
screen.
is,
It's
all
on the
right.
screen.
top right.
Second to the last.
Would you like me to stay on the plant list or move back to the plan?
14CO something.
COB was American Smoke Tree.
All right, so there are trees there.
They're small.
Yeah.
But I mean, it still would be nice to screen that side of the building.
They're 3-inch caliber trees. And they could be more vertical if you want to build. More vertical.
Yeah, I don't know, I'm trying to think of what a smoke tree looks like.
Purple leaves, it looks
They're-
like smoke too. Actually.
Purple leaves that look like
It has-
smoke.
has
Yeah,
a smoke-
they-
It has a kind of a
Oh, okay.
interesting appearance.
Kind of a
I think we got one in the backyard.
free foliage, but
I thought it was a bush, though.
It's kind of a bush.
Well, it is.
Yeah, kind of looks like a bush.
it is.
All right, well, that would be nice, because it would actually provide a lot of visual screening of that wall.
Drew, what do we have over there now? We have a few of them in that section.
Oops, wrong way.
Nothing on the north side or the west side, though.
On the north side, we just have the trees at the parking lot islands, no particular screening, and we are showing some screening that around where the playing field is, that, obviously if a second phase were required, those trees would need to come down.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's QB Swamp White Oak. Swamp White
So
Oak.
that's the one that would be screened.
Mm-hmm.
So any thoughts from the commissioners about additional screening, since they're not proposing any
QB was Swamp Oak.
Like I said,
enhancements to the
South.
commercial portion there? I don't know how much room we have there. Is that all proposed lawn then, or?
Yes.
So you have some room that you could do some, I'll call it foundation plantings.
Yeah,
It's been kind of an open area, though, when you look from 31 or Fabian, it's all the land is all open and.
On the back, you're not going to see any of this from Fabian?
No, I meant from the front, you're talking about the
Oh,
front.
from 31,
Yeah,
no, I'm
that-
talking about the whole north side.
Oh, you're still back there, okay. But you were talking about the front of the building. Could I see that picture that you passed to Sue?
Here's the lower left corner there. I took them of the north side on my phone today, but I didn't have a chance to print them out.
Oh, there, okay. Well, that's the, that's the,
The north wing of the original building, that's proposed to be apartments. And it looks like you've made some significant improvements to that elevation
That's right.
because of that. And so I'm thinking, people will be parking back there
yeah, that's right.
regularly.
That's right. So, yeah,
I'd like to see similar landscaping all the way around that wing, as
Yeah.
is proposed on the south side.
yeah, I think so too. Anything that you can have to break up the hard scapes.
What do you think, David?
If that's what you like, we'll figure out a way to accommodate it.
It'll make it a better,
Well, are you even proposing to paint those walls? Or you're saying repair as needed?
Yeah, I mean, they are, they come with a baked finish on them. Is it a new wall?
Yeah, the north wing, all of the outside.
So it's the north wing, we are, I didn't realize that we are proposing new exterior siding to that building. So
Okay.
it's gonna look similar
north
to the way
wing.
it looks. I'm sorry, the north wing here, but not the west wing.
Right,
Right.
where the apartments are going.
Yeah, no, so yes, that is all new siding in the back.
What is that siding?
Dennis, what's the material?
Horizontal rib metal. Do you have an example of that?
I think we're talking about two different things. I think we're saying that we are not replacing the walls of the west wing, but we are replacing the wall of the north wing
Right.
of the historic building.
Okay. But not even proposing painting of the west wing?
Correct.
Which I would recommend. I mean, I just think, you're going to spend, what is it, $40 million?
30.
Not quite, but yeah.
Hopefully not
It's
40.
going up.
I'm just saying, it's a major investment, and,
We understand. Yep.
As much as you can do to enhance that wing, because it is kind of I'll call it raw-looking
Yes.
addition. So we already addressed that, landscaping all the way around, similar to what's proposed for the south side of that wing. And then, since you brought it up, the north wing, you're proposing, interesting enough, horizontal metal siding.
I think the idea there is to pick up the horizontality of the rest of the building there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is that color then to be similar to the brick
Yes.
color? Okay.
May I interject?
Absolutely.
I'm curious about when you mentioned that there will be 2 other apartments not in the original building, or you were going to add them? Are they on the plan?
Yeah.
It's there.
You're on that little connection.
They're in the loading dock that connects the historic building with the metal shed building.
They're on the
Right now, that loading dock is really not being used for anything, and so,
Floor plan. Okay.
Yeah.
yeah. So we'll be substantially rebuilding that loading dock and making those attractive units.
There'll be windows and
Yes, yes,
things
yes.
that are, okay.
Right.
2 two-bedrooms.
The siding is going to coincide with,
So the siding will be, to the extent that we are replacing the siding there, it will be matching the siding of the west wing.
okay.
Yeah, it doesn't show detail, but I assume, you're saying it's matching the west wing? So that would be vertical? It doesn't specify.
No, I think that portion is masonry.
It says new metal siding.
Okay. He's giving me different answers here.
You guys want to like huddle and,
Give us a minute.
These things are, I guess,
so it's metal siding?
Yes.
Okay.
and access to those will be,
They will be from the main building, so it'll be connected to the corridor system that is running through the main building.
okay, staff has seen that,
Yes,
okay,
These are going to be nice units because they got windows on both sides.
that's right.
yeah.
So is that horizontal or vertical siding? Aha. Got him.
I think actually vertical setting.
To pick up the west wing.
West wing,
Yeah,
yep.
I would agree.
Okay, I see now.
Same siding.
I really have an issue with that, and I know the state agency has already kind of given the head nod, is that shroud at the top of the building. I'm really surprised that they recommended that.
It is.
I said last time I'd be happier with a cell tower in the back corner of this property. And the neighbors probably wouldn't like to hear that, but
Well, it is from the historic agency's perspective, I think it's the least objectionable of a small number of potential options for doing that.
Right.
It's been SHPO's objective for many years to get the equipment off the tower. So they see this as the best way to do that. The cell companies like it because it basically maintains the same service dimensions that they have now. And so, it is, I agree it's not perfect. It changes the proportion of the tower.
right.
I wish we didn't have to do it, but it's part of my job is to find appropriate compromises that make a project work, and I think this is one of those situations.
Staff had a conversation with Anthony Rubano a while ago when the opinion was that they were trying to put the separate cell tower up, and we strongly discouraged that. We didn't think it made any sense when you have a perfectly good building that would allow cell antennas to be stealthily hidden as opposed to putting up now a separate freestanding cell tower on the same property. We thought, frankly, that was ridiculous. Why would you do that when you have a co-locatable building?
Well, the large premise behind much of what we're compromising on this project is related to the significant historic character of this building. And to me, that impacts it.
Well, no question it impacts it. We just didn't think that now having a cell tower that would be as tall as that building or taller, right behind it, would benefit the appearance of that building or the property either.
To me, it helps focus on the flagpole, and the flagpole has always been historical, that's just been part of the monument.
I
for me.
agree.
Okay.
I agree, so to me, it seems that
It's-
doesn't make, people expect that extension because
the
the flagpole
flagpole.
was always part of it.
And the way it is now, it just distracts from the flagpole, and that's the most important.
So you're okay with the
I'm
shroud?
okay.
Not to put your architect on the spot, but just curious his opinion.
This is not, we're not going to go until 10.
So actually, when we looked at the rendering, I know what you're saying. I was always, actually the National Park Service came up with this idea as what they thought would be the best solution. I think the other thing you understand that the cell equipment that's on the building now needs to be relocated and updated because they update their equipment all the time. Being that the building's on the National Register, it comes under a 106 review by the state agency. They would not allow them to replace that equipment on that cell tower as it is now. In other words, they don't find any of those installations acceptable, so we have to get them off the tower.
Okay.
But when we looked at the rendering, it did seem to make a lot more sense than I thought it would. I think I'm fine with it. So
Any thought about it stepping back from the face of the wall?
they were.
Draw more attention to it, do you think?
No, I think what we're doing is it's in the plane of the brick. It's the color of the brick. It's not acting like brick, but it blends from a distance with the brick. And it's the stone cap that's up there still remains in place. So we're not taking away any of the original historic character. We're just adding on to it and not
In
covering
sense,
it.
you think visually it'll disappear?
Well, it's not, nothing disappears. I always try to claim that, but it never happens. But I, with the rendering, I thought it was the most. It was, there it is. It's pretty amazingly okay. I think it's because the flagpole is so tall. It's like
Yeah.
a 50-foot tagpole.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. Again, I've been struggling with what I would call the livability of units without windows that you can see out other than down at the floor, looking at grass into a hedgerow. And I understand the Historic Preservation Agency is going to dictate. Very disappointed to hear that now gets extended to the both north and south wings. I think that's what we heard at last meeting, even though your images aren't reflecting that here. That was a change or an edict that came through prior to last Wednesday's meeting.
Actually, I mean, it is included on this rendering. It wasn't included in your original materials, but, because it's concealed behind the landscaping, you only see hints of that. Like in these windows, you see a little bit of the hint of that below the sill line there. And then on the south wing, that's the commercial space. So in some ways, it doesn't matter as much because it's not a residential unit. Mr. Chairman, we share your concerns with this. This was sort of the fundamental insight into the project that allowed us to move forward. I think it resulted from a dialogue between our team and the state historic office and city staff here. We're now consulting with the City Historic Preservation Commission about it. It's one of the things, probably the thing, that is most challenging about this building. And again, from my perspective, it's the compromise that allows the project to move forward. Without that compromise, there would be no historic approval, and the historic tax credits would not be available to us, and then the project wouldn't be financially feasible. So it is one of the things that makes this such a challenging historic preservation opportunity. I think from our perspective, it is a relatively limited number of units. But it's not, 3. It's, I think, about 20 units or 25 units that have that condition. So as we've said from the beginning, this building and these apartments are not going to be for everyone. There are going to be people who don't want to live in here, who are not interested enough in the location and the quality of the space in the units to put up with, if you want, the units below the sill line. But we also think for every person who's not interested, there may be at least one person who is interested, and that's the approach that we're taking. So I can't explain it any better than that.
You're making a significant financial investment in this This is your expertise. I assume you guys vetted the marketability of those units, otherwise you wouldn't be standing here today.
That's right.
Yeah. I still don't like it. I count 23 units out
Yeah.
of 80. And actually, maybe it is 25 because you have a second and third floor on the south wing. And which brings up a question. On the third floor, you show the operable units at the base of the wall, but I'm not seeing them on the second floor of the south wing where there are apartments.
Correct. So on the second floor, and again, this was part of the negotiation just at that south edge of the building, I think it's 1 or 2 units that face immediately south are not going to have the subsill windows because SHPO's opinion is that you'll see those from the street. And so those have skylights. It's only those 2 units in there. On the west side of the building, it has the full height window that you see. So it's only, I think it's those 2 that are there.
Yeah, you're right.
And again, there
That's
are.
interesting. So you're saying they won't allow them on the second floor, but they allow them on the third?
It has to do with the height of the parapet that's concealing views from the street. There is no parapet that conceals the second floor, but there is enough of a parapet from the second to the third floor that those windows on below the sill will be concealed. So that's the issue.
I'm missing something there.
In other words, there's no parapet on the wing.
Go to the south elevation. Sorry. It's in the lower right-hand corner of the drawing. Can you enlarge that? Yep. I don't know what parapet you're talking about. There's no parapets on there. There's a
If you'll,
flat wall.
if you'll notice in this elevation, you see the rectangular portions in the building elevation, which is actually the parapet of the second floor. Those windows are actually in below the sill of the third floor. So there's a parapet screen. You can't see those windows. But if you put those windows below the second floor window, you would see them because there's no parapet on the one-story mattress factory.
Huh. Interesting.
So we had the option there. We didn't have the option on.
Okay.
You know, it's confusing.
Well, I mean, they're effective on the third floor.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, you're looking down, but at least you can look out and have a little bit of a view.
Yeah, that's the thing. They are low windows, but they also have to be high enough to allow access, 15 inches off the floor so you can operate them for accessibility reasons. So, and when you're sitting down, they're a nice height.
Yeah, and to a related code issue, you don't need a certain amount of fresh air.
They're operable skylights to provide ventilation. So that's their main on the second floor. Yeah, the skylights for the second floor units are operable for ventilation. So they're sized and placed for proper ventilation. They're like a Velux window with a motorized operator.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Anybody have any other questions while I'm fumbling here for my notes? Any thoughts about the design review?
No.
Yes,
You
no?
answered- They answered
Is
satisfactory.
everybody thinking head nod yes?
Yeah,
Because I'm not there yet,
okay,
but I don't have to be.
Right.
But we have conditions here
yeah,
that we've talked about, so
right.
once we get through this, we
Should we
can
go-
state those conditions as part of our approval. I'm still struggling with resident amenities, site amenities. I know we talked about benches, trash receptacles. We talked about relocating the outdoor play amenities if the land bank parking ever got expanded. I think that was subject to. Although it's in the back, so, well, they wouldn't allow it in the front. That's what the subject to piece was.
Correct.
We talk about with residential developments, outdoor space, private outdoor space. I can't think of a residential development that we've done in this community that hasn't had private outdoor space. And again, this goes back to the marketability piece, and they've vetted that from their perspective, otherwise they wouldn't be here. But it's a concern I have.
Give me an example, Tom, of what.
A balcony
Oh,
or a patio. It's very specific in the multifamily guidelines. And to that end, I don't know if there's an opportunity to put balconies or
okay.
do something on the rear of the building, since you have more flexibility there. I don't know what they call it, a French balcony? Where they have basically French doors
doors?
with a railing. Juliet?
Juliet balcony.
Thank you. Just a thought. It also talks about picnic areas, it talks about a pool, tennis, basketball, and I'm not saying all these amenities have to be added, but the residents here have nothing. One
Well-
play field and a tot lot.
If I may, respectfully, if you look at the Aurora St. Charles Hospital project that we did in Aurora, there are no comparable resident amenities there that you're talking about. The building itself and the inherent nature of that historic building provided some opportunities for resident amenities, so there is a large community room in that building. Here on the second floor, we are providing some community rooms that we are still programming, but more than likely there'll be game rooms or a library for the residents. Outdoor amenities at St. Charles included sort of a large site that the folks could walk around, and we provided sidewalks and walking paths similar to what we're providing here. So I think that it is in the nature of projects like this that the level of amenities are consistent with what we've shown here. I hear your concern, but I think given the nature of this project and the historic nature, I'm not sure what Juliet balconies would add, and I suspect that historic preservation would not allow us to do anything on the back, even on the back of the building, that would provide that. So we are relying on the playing field on the tot lot, and then on the second floor amenities, game room, library, those kinds of things that to serve the residents. They're also close to the forest preserve across the street.
There's nothing to say they can't go
It's a good point.
vast lawn on the east side
Right.
either.
Right.
I mean, there's
Huge lawn.
There's so much space there.
Or go to our local pool. I mean, the more amenities you add, I think the more the price goes up for the rental.
Yeah, I'm just citing our guidelines. They're pretty specific in that area. So, just something to consider. There was a comment made about traffic related to volleyball night and not being taken into consideration. Do you guys have any thoughts about that?
I'll let Steve answer that.
I can't remember the specifics of
The traffic.
comment. I just know that they were talking about dropping
picking
kids off,
off.
picking them up, and I've heard that on several occasions about the intensity of those events and how it might impact the parking on the property.
Well, excuse me, we're providing roughly 3 times more parking for the commercial units back there. So as far as intensity goes, it helps spread it out, because instead of people waiting to try to get into a space, there's going to be more open spaces for them.
Did you say 3 times?
Yeah, roughly.
Okay.
3 times, we're increasing the commercial spots 3 times for roughly half the commercial space.
Okay.
So that's going to help with that. And a lot of that's a little off-peak too, later in the evening when, and obviously we have restrictions now with Fabian Parkway, but
I think one other thing is with the operation of that, seeing it happen myself, the biggest problem has been turning around with the vehicles. You have people dropping off the children and then trying to pick them up. In this situation, they'll have a way to go around the building, turn around, and then come back around, plus the parking issue. You have people
right,
that are waiting in
the
spaces.
east or the west side of that existing parking lot kind of dies into that gravel road that then runs to the north side of the west wing. And
Right.
obviously people weren't using that either, so that'll help too.
Based on what Scott just said, can you clarify what is that extension of pavement along the north wing in the back?
That's basically for the fire lane / fire truck to be able to turn around.
Is that asphalt?
Yes. Essentially, we had to be instead of putting a big traffic circle or cul-de-sac for the fire truck to turn around to exit if it goes back in that area, then we basically made a variation of a hammerhead in order for a larger fire truck to pull up to the north and it backs up and then it can turn around.
Any thoughts about permeable pavement in that area in lieu of asphalt? And I know there's a cost component to that.
Big time.
But, the residents are using that area, and the less pavement, the less asphalt, the better, in my opinion.
Well, it basically comes down to we need to support the fire truck, and that's harder to do with a permeable
Well, even if
pavers.
it's not permeable, some type of paver or
Yeah.
different type of paving.
I mean, the short answer is we have not considered that back there.
Yeah, something softer, exactly.
Not black asphalt, but still.
I mean, they're not driving on it except in an emergency situation, so, if you could have it as green as possible,
Again, it is a cost component.
yes, it is.
So,
Any thoughts?
I don't see.
You're fine with it, asphalt? Asphalt gets really hot.
It is.
But you can do chalk drawings on asphalt.
All right, no one else has an opinion on that?
Well,
And do it on brick.
I agree with you, Tom. It would be an improvement, but I'm not sure it would be a requirement on our part.
Okay, well, I think he satisfactorily answered the question related to the volleyball demand. You guys okay with that? Can you elaborate a little bit on resident parking? You said the front is designated for resident parking, and then I don't know if the back is also allowed to be resident parking. Is there any designation for where people can park, or can they park anywhere they want?
I think, as I hoped I explained in one of the last meetings, generally, we will not assign parking spaces unless we start to have a problem with people spilling out and people struggling to find parking. If we hear this from our residential tenants, if we hear this from the commercial businesses saying, hey, people are parking in these spaces, we don't want them parking here. Generally, the way the site is divided tends to lend itself naturally to having the residential park in the front and the commercial park in the rear. However, as you've all noted, there is a residential entrance where the tot lot and the playing field is at the north. So if you live in the north wing of the building, more likely than not, you're going to want to park closer to where your apartment is. My view is that that's okay, because I think the number of units in that wing is relatively small, and so they're not going to take up that many of those parking spaces. But again, if it does become an issue, we are willing to assign parking spaces in the front of the building and require residential tenants to park there. And we do that through a variety of mechanisms. We'll paint numbers on the pavement, and then assign people, give them a hang tag or something like that. We have a tow list. We are, intending to monitor the site pretty carefully and tow those who are not registered if they're parking there overnight. So, I think we have a variety of ways of managing the parking on this site.
Did we say that there's only two primary resident access points, the rear lobby and the, I'll call it northwest corner, or the corner of the
there is
West
a,
wing and the resident, there's a lobby there on the north side.
well, so there's the tower, right, is
And then
one
the main
access
one's the
point.
front.
Right. And then there is a rear entrance, which is where, people would go if they go out, and that's closer to the trash room there. That is, we see that as more of an emergency exit, but it is, people can use it to get into their apartments. And then the entrance in the north there is the third residential entrance.
Okay, so there is none on the south side of the west wing.
South
There's a
side.
door there, it's an emergency exit, but can they not get in that location? If you go to the floor plan. Right here. There's a stair there, and I assume that's an emergency exit?
That's the rear access, then there's one to the north.
Yeah, can someone come in that door on the south side?
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry, there is one here
Okay,
that is.
right. That one I was
access to-
talking about earlier.
Yeah,
Is the one to the south by the stair also on the west side?
That's the one that goes to the parking lot.
Okay, I know where I would park.
yeah.
I mean, I'm serious. I'm going to be right by that door, and that serves a significant number of these units. So I think it could be a problem. I don't think the residents are going to want to park in front.
Well, except that the elevator is at the front of the building. And so if you live on the second floor or the third floor and you want to take the elevator, you're more likely going to park in the front. And the rest of the building, it's kind of 6 of one, half dozen of the other, because the corridor is the center here, and you can get to any of these units equally by parking in the front or parking in the rear. So,
When it's 20 and 30 degrees out, I'm parking as close to that back door as I can. I'd rather walk inside than out.
I understand.
So, I think it could be a problem with the use of the overlap. I think you might have to do something to control that. I don't have a good answer for you.
Well, we have the ability to manage it more tightly if necessary.
And maybe you just do that. You just see how it plays out.
Right.
The tenants in the commercial spaces start complaining. You might have to start signing it and monitoring it.
Yep.
I don't think there's a need to create a specific condition.
No.
The only other thing I struggle with on my list here is that sidewalk to the west. And I think I was KDOT or the township.
I'm sorry, say again?
The sidewalk connection, the pedestrian connection to the west. I know that, is it Allendale?
Yes.
Development to the west does not have sidewalks, I believe.
The unincorporated part does not, correct?
Correct. So the sidewalk's not going to really, it's going to take them to that residential street, but then there's no connection.
If you take it from Fabian, along Fabian, yes.
Yeah.
Because there is no sidewalk along Allen Drive until you get to the city.
It goes a little bit to the heart of what Joan was saying at the last meeting, with these kids, and you'd love to have that opportunity for them to be
Ride their
safe and
bikes
get
and-
into a safe environment. As it is now, there's
But
no way.
the danger, I think, is more along Fabian Parkway than Allen Drive. I mean, on the
Well,
kids,
absolutely. That's what I'm
you know,
saying.
that, I mean, the kids that live along Allendale probably ride their bikes to the school and
Sure.
probably ride on the street,
Right.
Probably.
if they do ride their
Yeah.
bikes, because
Or
there's
their
no
parents are
sidewalk.
walking them down
Yeah,
the street.
or driving them.
Is there any recourse to revisit that?
I mean, we will continue to consult with KDOT about it. It's ultimately KDOT's decision to go to Allen Drive. I think, as Joel and Scott have said, they have spoken with the Geneva Township Highway Department, and there's not an interest in continuing it up Allen Drive.
Right. What do the fellow commissioners think?
I think we're up against a brick wall.
Right.
Well, we can make it a condition subject too, just like you did with the zoning.
Condition for what? Along Allen Drive?
No, just to get a sidewalk, at least to that point,
Okay.
if he feels strongly enough about it. And KDOT will decide?
I'm not sure what it accomplishes.
It gets them into the residential neighborhood where it's a much, yeah, it's not ideal, absolutely. I'm not going to hang my hat on it, I'm just
No,
throwing it out
I
there.
think we can't, yeah.
No?
It's a tough one. I don't know. They're going to have a lot of hurdles to have to meet later on, I'm afraid, but I don't know if that one will be.
Let that one go?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's all my questions. Appreciate you hanging in there with me.
Likewise.
Just double checking here. So, are we ready to vote on this?
We've talked about lighting, haven't we?
We
did.
talked about lighting at the last meeting, unless you have some follow-up questions. I looked at the fixture. I actually think the fixture's kind of interesting and goes well with this kind of, architectural style.
Okay, I agree. I'm just going over our checklist too.
We had some conditions, so we can clarify those if you're ready to
Okay.
vote on it. And I don't know how everyone's feeling about this. Do you want to have some informal discussion about how you're going to vote before we actually put a motion out there?
What,
Oh,
where are the conditions, what pages are the conditions?
Page 6 of the staff report, under design review, there's 4 conditions.
The September 1
Oh, okay, design, okay,
report,
okay.
6.
The findings are also,
Oh,
We got to
and
go
that's-
through
that's
we got to go
if-
through the findings
Those are on
Okay.
page 3.
on page 3.
Okay,
But before we get to those, just want to kind of straw poll the group. Tom?
Pardon?
Straw poll the group.
Yeah, I'm okay.
You're ready to vote on it?
I think I'm
Positively.
ready. Yeah, as I stated earlier, I mean, we had concerns and, during the public hearing, the same as the public did, and I asked questions, I listened to the questions and weighed them, and, I think again, with the added conditions that we have, I think we're doing the best we can. And it should be passed on to the city council at this point, because they, of course, they will equally have concerns. and-
Understand that this is, design review is final, except on appeal.
Good.
So if we vote it down, then they would have to appeal to city
Right.
council, similar to a
No.
recently passed
And
project.
I would not be in favor of that.
Okay, so you're saying that you're ready to vote positively for the
Yes,
project?
I am.
I'm okay with it.
Me too.
Okay, I struggled with it, I'll tell you.
I understand.
And I was on the Historic Preservation Commission when this, the owner came forward and asked for the landmark status. But I have mixed feelings about, staying true to that historic character and then the viability of, a building in our times. And, I think it is a historically significant building. It's one of a kind. And
Yes.
we're very fortunate to have it in our community. So understanding that this is not an ideal solution and understanding that it's been sitting as it has for many, many years. I think this is the best option we have. And everything comes with some compromise.
Well said.
So you guys are willing to invest in this thing. I'm willing to say yes, go forward with it.
We appreciate that.
So we did add some conditions.
Yes.
So before we vote, let's take a look at well, I guess we can go through the findings and then we can talk about conditions. Make sense? What's that?
I wrote down what I think the conditions are, but
Okay.
I could be wrong.
Yeah. I would
Well,
go the other
let's
way.
go through the findings. I'm sorry, what page are those on?
Page 3.
Page 3.
Page 3. You guys are gonna make me read all these? Does anybody
don't-
else want to read tonight?
We could take turns.
I'll read them.
It's like class.
Yes.
You want to read them?
Sure,
Awesome. Thank you.
take a turn.
You'll make him sound.
So,
Sound better.
design review findings number one, the project is consistent with applicable design guidelines. The finding would be, the city's plan commission has adopted both standard design review criteria for commercial and institutional projects and multifamily design guidelines. The city has no design guidelines for mixed-use projects. The standard design review criteria are intended to apply to non-residential development, and the multifamily design guidelines are intended to apply to non-mixed-use sites, that would be residential use only, where new buildings are proposed. This finding does not apply. There are no applicable design guidelines.
Oh, so you read all that? and
Although,
Well, you must have dealt with both of those other criteria in other projects,
Right.
I would assume. And therefore, they're referenced to remind you that they exist. But because of the mixed-use nature of this site, it's the staff's opinion that they don't apply. Fair statement, Mr. Strassman?
Yes.
my only comment on that is, I'm not asking to modify this, is we obviously did visit the multifamily design guidelines by nature of the fact that you're putting 80 residential units in here. So even though it strictly doesn't apply, there's no mixed-use design guidelines, we did discuss those at length. I just want that to be part of the public record. So with that, unless you have any questions or comments, we need a motion.
I move that we accept the findings of the project is consistent with applicable design guidelines.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Roll call.
Goslin?
Aye.
Harms?
Yes.
Joseph?
Aye.
Lalonde?
Yes.
McGrail?
Aye.
Peterson?
Aye.
And Schneider absent. Motion carried.
All right. Number two, the project conforms to the comprehensive plan, and specifically to the land use, urban design, and environment elements of the comprehensive plan. The finding would be, with conditions of approval, as recommended by city staff, the project conforms to the land use element primarily by providing a mixed-use development on the subject property, consistent with land use classification assigned to the subject property. Among the goals this element seeks are to maintain the city's attractiveness and historically significant places, to provide housing diversity and prices, to coordinate land use planning and transportation, and to redevelop obsolete industrial areas as mixed-use developments. The proposed planned development overlay would improve the appearance of and preserve a historically significant building. Originally built as a factory, adding residential uses to the existing building, as proposed, would achieve the goal of transforming this obsolete factory into a mixed-use building. The proposed planned development overlay, with its accompanying subdivision, would provide additional right-of-way for Fabian Parkway and Batavia Avenue, Illinois 31, allowing for future roadway improvements without the cost to acquire the right-of-way, and includes installing sidewalk and a needed pedestrian crossing at the Fabian Parkway, Batavia Avenue, Illinois 31 intersection. This crosswalk will also provide access to the existing regional trail system. The urban design element seeks to improve the quality of the built environment, highlight significant gateways to the city, and to improve the city's image from public streets. the proposed rehabilitation of the significant and historic campaign building, along with other site improvements, will result in an increase in the quality of the built environment. The building and site serve as a city gateway, and improving the building and site as proposed will highlight its visual qualities as viewed from streets. The environment element seeks to enhance the region's air, land, and water resources. The building may contain asbestos and lead paint and was not developed in a manner to comply with current stormwater management codes. Building and site improvements would include asbestos and lead paint abatement, and proposed site improvements will comply with current stormwater management codes. The comprehensive plan also contains other elements and goals related to preservation of historic properties, providing affordable and accessible housing, and to ensure efficient delivery of public services. As proposed, the planned development overlay would restore a significant historic building, add to the city's supply of affordable and accessible housing, and would allow for continued efficient delivery of public services without the need for additional resources.
Thank you. Any comment? No. All good with that language?
Mm-hmm.
I would just add under the environmental element that the building we brought up the current energy code, which obviously is more environmentally friendly. So we would need a motion.
Okay, I'll so move. Is it? Oh, I wasn't done.
Oh.
I so move that we approve the findings for number 2 for the design review with the addition, with the added addition of, what, now, how did you word that? With the,
I don't think you need to add.
okay,
it in.
and it does
It's just a
specify in
comment I
here
had. It's a given.
about the asbestos.
It's a given, right?
Management, yeah.
I just stated it for the record.
Okay, that's it then. Mhm. I
Great.
do approve.
And we had a second,
Second.
still seconding, okay? Roll call, please.
Goslin,
Aye.
Harms,
Yes.
Joseph,
Aye.
Lalonde,
Yes.
McGrail,
Aye.
Peterson,
Aye.
and Schneider absent. Motion carried.
All right, finding number 3, the project is consistent with all applicable provisions of the zoning code as modified by the plan development overlay. Finding would be, with conditions of approval as recommended by city staff, the project, as designed and conditionally approved, including modifications to the zoning code through the plan development overlay, will be consistent with all provisions of the zoning code.
Which we just
Approved
approved
or recommended, yeah.
to recommend, right? So pretty straightforward. Okay.
I move that we accept and recommend finding number 3
Second.
as modified by the plan development. Excuse me.
Now you can second it.
Second.
All right. Roll call, please.
Goslin,
Aye.
Harms,
Yes.
Joseph,
Aye.
Lalonde,
Yes.
McGrail,
Aye.
Peterson,
Aye.
and Schneider absent. Motion carried.
Finding number 4, the project is compatible with adjacent and nearby development. Finding, with conditions of approval as recommended by city staff, the project, as designed and conditionally approved, would be compatible with adjacent and nearby uses. The subject property is adjacent to arterial streets and to property that is either used as an office development or, in case of the property to the west of the north portion of the site, that is not suitable for residential development. Beyond the adjacent streets and nearest properties are other high-density residential properties or forest preserved lands. Adding residences to the subject property as proposed would be compatible with these uses.
Any discussion? Okay, we need a motion.
I'll make a motion that we adopt staff's finding as to finding number 4.
I'll second that.
Okay, roll call.
Goslin?
Aye.
Harms?
Yes.
Joseph?
Aye.
Lalonde?
Yes.
McGrail?
Aye.
Peterson?
Aye.
And Schneider absent.
We're getting
Motion
there,
carried.
guys. Making progress.
Finding number 5, the project design provides for safe and efficient provision of public services. Finding would be, with conditions of approval as recommended by city staff, the project would not generate a need for city services that the city's existing personnel and facilities would be unable to provide. The amount of traffic generated by the proposed development would be negligible compared to the existing traffic on the adjacent roadways. While the city recognizes the challenges presented by the nearby intersection of Fabian Parkway and Batavia Avenue, Illinois 31, it also notes the following. A, that intersection is under the jurisdiction of outside agencies, both KDOT and IDOT. B, the need for intersection improvements is a regional issue, extending well beyond the boundaries of the subject property. C, the estimated cost of improvements needed at or recommended for the intersection is substantial. D, use of the subject property for any of the currently allowable uses in the MU mixed-use zoning district would similarly add traffic to the intersection area. E, the petitioner's construction of a north-south crosswalk on the western side of the intersection will improve safety at the intersection. F, the petitioner will donate right-of-way for future expansion of the roadway of Fabian Parkway and of the roadway of Batavia Avenue, Illinois 31, adjacent to its boundaries, thereby contributing to the improvement of public services there.
Any comment? Okay.
The word negligible bothers me, that it's.
Where's that?
It's in the
proposed
beginning.
development would be negligible compared, the traffic would be, traffic generated by this development would be negligible compared to the existing traffic. Negligible seems.
I think existing under current use at full capacity.
Well, what the finding is referring to is the applicant's traffic analysis and the traffic analysis that was provided by one of the resident objectors that both concluded that the increase in traffic from what is being proposed would be negligible compared to what's there now. And that's all that finding was establishing.
And that being said, I also agree that any other entity that would develop it other than yours would have the same result, if not more.
Potentially more.
Yeah, right. So,
There is a little bit of a synergy with the commercial residential uses and how traffic is generated. If it was all residential, it'd be more impact mornings and evenings, obviously.
Right.
This
Both
way it's
traffic and
spread out
parking.
across the day.
Right.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, we need a motion.
I'll move that we approve findings number 5.
Second.
Bill seconded?
second?
Bill seconded.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said still second. Still, Bill.
Still Bill. All right. Want me to say it? Roll call.
Goslin,
Aye.
Harms,
Yes.
Joseph,
Aye.
Lalonde,
Yes.
McGrail,
Aye.
Peterson,
Aye.
and Schneider absent. Motion carried.
Okay. Thank you. You're welcome, Mr. Schuster.
Yes.
Appreciate that.
Yes, thank you for reading that.
Your rest.
This is-
Conditions recommended, staff, there are staff recommended conditions.
Yeah, I'm just
Page 6.
getting to those.
Page,
Okay. So, page 6, and we want to add to those what we discussed earlier. And Scott, you said you had a list.
I think I have them, but please add to them or correct me if I've got them wrong. I had, one is to add perimeter landscaping, 1 tree and 5 bushes every 25 feet north of the north line of the building, and add to the south of that line if existing vegetation is removed. I had remove or relocate or remove loading dock to not block.
Before you move off of that one, I think we acquiesce to arborvitae only and no trees
Because of the utility easement
because
there.
it's a utility easement.
Okay, sorry.
So we want to be a little more specific than that.
Perimeter plantings, arborvitae or equivalent as approved by
Yeah,
staff.
and I would say to significantly provide a visual screen at maturity. Because you're not going to have it when they're planted.
No, right,
So they plant them 10 feet apart or whatever, and they grow out.
right.
Sound about right? Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Good.
Do you want to reread that one?
Yeah, so that would be add perimeter landscaping, arborvitae or equivalent for screening of, I can't even read my own writing. Perimeter screening north of the north line of building and add south of the south line if existing vegetation is removed.
Okay,
All right.
sounds right.
Then I had remove or relocate loading dock so it is not blocking the parking lot access on the south.
You're not really moving the
It wasn't
loading dock.
removed, right.
You're just reorientating the truck access to the loading dock.
I'm sorry, what was the
The
condition
loading
again?
dock and the truck,
Yeah, but what's the condition that you're looking for?
Remove loading dock, remove or relocate loading dock, probably not remove, relocate loading dock to not block parking lot access on the south.
I would say just ensure loading solution that doesn't block access to the west part of the site.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's clear because you're not going to move the loading dock,
Truck, no, trucks would be parallel to the building.
right? Want to reread that?
Relocate loading dock,
No.
I think he's going to redesign
redesign,
the loading
sorry.
dock to avoid obstruction.
To avoid blocking traffic ingress egress to the west portion of the site.
You have that, Jenny?
Yes.
Poor Jenny.
She's the real boss.
That's right.
I'm trying to
She's
keep
the
up
one
with
that's
her.
getting all this.
She makes it come out right.
And then I had add foundation landscaping along the north side of the west wing of the building and along the west side of the north wing of the building. Or foundation, I said foundation, yes.
I don't think we added on the landscaping on the north wing.
I think you were just looking at the
It was
west side of the
it was
west
the
wing.
west wing, it was on the north and
North
west
side
sides of the west wing. Similar to what's already proposed for the south side.
You were just talking about this and this, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And you basically would match what you're
Yeah.
proposing on the south.
Okay.
Those are the ones that I had. I don't know if
Okay, did you get that?
Could you repeat that for me?
Add landscaping,
foundation landscaping.
Foundation landscaping substantially matching the south side plantings to the north and west sides of the west wing.
there you go. I think that was a TV series. The only other thing I had was on the existing west wing, expanding it to include new paint. You talked about repairs. I think you,
As we tried to establish earlier, that the design review is not really to impose conditions on the facades of the building, but to review the detail of the site improvements. You can certainly include that as a request, but we've kind of established that the Plan Commission is not to impose conditions relative to the building facade,
and why is that?
because it's being reviewed, the facade is being reviewed by the Historic Preservation Commission.
Yeah, but that's the west wing, so there's no historic significance of that part of the building.
I agree, but it's still part of the facade of the building.
Okay.
The entire site is historic. We don't differentiate based on parts of the building in historic preservation. It's the entire site.
Well, there is an architectural component under the design review portion of the zoning ordinance, so that's what I guess I was hanging my hat on. If you want to make it a recommendation, we can do that. And not make it a condition. So it's not a significant issue.
Yeah.
HBC can deal with it.
We'll be out there with some rollers.
It sounds like you guys are willing to do it anyway, so.
Can you then at least restate what your request is?
They just indicated that the improvements to the west wing would include potentially a new roof and repairs to the siding. And I'm just suggesting that they also repaint the entire the walls on the west wing of the building. So that would just be a recommendation for the record. So we won't
Understood.
make that a condition.
But you'd also say timely, wouldn't you? I mean, not a new roof to begin with, only when needed.
As part of the improvements.
When needed, though,
As part of the improvements.
but not coincidental with the interior or the building of the apartments?
Yes.
Oh, I thought-
I'm just thinking you're going to put $30 million into this building, improve everything except that portion of the building.
I thought he stated when they needed a new roof, of course, they'd put it there, or they.
No, I think you said that if,
We think that wing needs a new roof.
probably needs a new roof, and you're
Yeah.
going to do it,
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
make those other repairs.
Good, well, I think that's.
Okay, so those are we have 4 added conditions. Beyond that, we have city council approval of the application for zoning map amendment for a plan development overlay district for the subject property, including changes to site plan per city council approval. Number 2, approval of the certificate of appropriateness for the subject property. That's HPC. Number 3, the modifications to the zoning code requirements as listed for the amendment to the zoning map for plan development overlay district for the subject property. And number 4, the conditions of approval recommended by city staff for approval of the amendment to the zoning map for plan development overlay district for the subject property. Those are the additional conditions. So all of those conditions, total of 8. Do we have a motion for design review approval?
I will so move.
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Goslin?
Aye.
Harms?
Yes.
Joseph?
Aye.
Lalonde?
Yes.
McGrail?
Aye.
Peterson?
Aye.
And Schneider absent. Motion carried.
Great. That concludes this portion of the meeting.
Well, you've got more.
We have an agenda. I gotta find it.
If I may, just Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Commission, we just wanted to thank you for a very long, very thoughtful, and occasionally emotional look at this project. We understand that there are folks in the community who don't like what we're proposing to do. I'm not sure that we're ever going to be converting everybody's opinion of this project, but you should all know that we are committed to being good neighbors here and to doing something with the building that will make this community proud, and to having this building continue in its kind of historic role as a beacon for the city of Batavia and the entire valley here. So thank you again for all of your time, for your thoughtful comments. We really appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Good, and good luck.
So the next meeting for you is Historic Preservation Agency on Monday, the 11th?
Yep, that's right.
No, not,
And then after that, City Council, did you say 19th, or is it?
Committee of the whole.
Committee of the Whole on the 19th?
Correct.
Yes.
I'm just stating that for the audience. I know you guys probably know that. All right, well, thank you all for coming.
Thanks.
Appreciate
Yeah.
it. All right. To continue our meeting, we have item number 7, matters from the public, for items not on the agenda. They're all leaving.
well, there's a few still sitting there.
Anybody have anything that you'd like to address? Okay, if not, any other business? Yes, sir. Oh, okay. Great, thank you. Hand it over to you guys for the record. Anything else? Other business? Drew?
No, I was
Come
just-
on.
Give us something.
What are you
Oh,
trying
other
to do,
than
Tom?
the,
What is your
Anything?
purpose here?
So the continuation, I had requested that we get some materials more in advance than the Friday before, since you probably have those materials because it was continued. So the sooner you can get them to us, the better. It'll give us more opportunity to review them and be prepared for that meeting.
Is that same stretch?
I
Yes,
think it is.
so that is,
By the water tower?
it's at the corner of, or I should say the two corners
Right.
of Independence and Spuler at Wilson Street. So current water tower property, there is a request to divide that property into 6 lots for single-family residential lots. If you remember, about a year ago, there was a proposal for
Right.
12 or 14 apartment units.
Started at 12, and I think we asked them to reduce it, and they
Yes.
elected or decided that they couldn't, it wasn't financially feasible.
So it's a zoning map amendment to rezone it to R1H. There's a plan development to be considered, and there's a preliminary plan of subdivision and design review.
Okay.
And no comp plan, the proposed density meets the comp plan, so there doesn't.
Everybody
there's-
available on the 20th?
Yes.
Okay.
And just so you know, we are getting inundated with petition requests or inquiries, so we
Related to
anticipate-
that?
No, just to other projects that are in town, so.
Okay.
or to be in
We're
town.
gonna be busy.
So, yeah, we won't go into details at this point because a lot of them are still inquiries, but we are getting a lot more interest in development, so.
Is there a reason for this big influx all of a sudden, or?
I would guess that the recession is over and people are trying to beat the interest rates. So I think that's part of it.
We're making Batavia great.
Again, make it
Trying,
again,
huh?
right?
Trying very hard. I
Anything
see the
else?
gas station was demolished, or was it in the process of
It was in the process. I didn't see if it was completely
It's
down
halfway
today, so.
Halfway,
It's
yeah.
about
Canopy's
about
gone.
3/4 of the way gone.
Three
I'm
quarters,
sorry,
okay.
what were you talking about?
The gas
gas
station?
station.
Oh,
Old marathon on Wilson
being
and
torn down, right?
Oh, it is.
Washington.
Then will we be seeing something from them, or?
I think not till spring, probably.
Okay. All right.
Any update on 1 Washington Place?
Still working through details with the developer at this point. There's some financial aspects that we're looking at and things, so we're trying to get those straightened away and resolved, and hopefully we'll have that done soon. So plat should be ready for recording pretty soon to consolidate the land, but we're also finishing up the final details on that.
So there wouldn't be any substantial changes that would require it to come back here?
If there are, you would be seeing it, yes.
Okay.
So,
Great.
We'd be glad to help.
Maybe they could lower the building. That would save some money.
Cream color paint might be a semi-shade darker. Have to run that by.
To save about $1 million.
We could really, what did you suggest, Tom? What did you suggest in the alternative? Save the money? Did you suggest something?
Oh, no, I don't want that on the record.
I did. I suggested something, Sue.
Sort of.
All right, let's adjourn.
Yes, I moved it for adjournment.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Whoa.